Today we'll start a unit on absolute value and piecewise functions. In Algebra 2, as we look at new functions, if we don't know what they look like, we're going to make a t-table. So when I plug these numbers into this absolute value symbol, absolute value means the distance from 0. So -2 is 2 spaces away from 0. -1 is 1 space away from 0. And 0 is 0 spaces away from 0. 1 is 1 space away. 2 is 2 spaces away. So remember that definition. Absolute value means the distance from 0. And distance cannot be negative. If distance were negative, then we could go into the upside down like in Stranger Things. But unfortunately, that is fantasy and this is real life. So remember that anything that comes out of those absolute value symbols is positive because absolute value is the distance from 0 and distance cannot be negative. Once we find these values, we can go ahead and plot this on a coordinate plane. So I'm going to plot -2, 2, -1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 2 on my graph. When I connect the points together, my graph looks like a V for absolute value. F of x equals the absolute value of x is what's called our parent function. Anytime we see a change to our parent function, our graph is going to change. So as I plug these x values in, I'll notice different y values. -2 minus 3 is -5. The absolute value of that is +5. -1 minus 3 is -4. The absolute value would be +4. And that will go on until we get to 3. 3 minus 3 gives us 0. 4 minus 3 gives us 1. And 5 minus 3 gives us 2. As we put these points on this graph, we'll notice that it looks different than the parent function. In fact, the vertex is at a different place. The vertex is the very point where those two sides of that V meet. The vertex for the parent function is at 0, 0, but the vertex for this function is at 3, 0. So we can see that this graph moved to the right 3. So that 3 on the inside is moving us to the right 3. I want you to try to do this t-table on your own. We'll come back and graph it later. Go ahead and pause the video here and fill out the t-table. Come back when you're finished. Welcome back. Check your t-table. You should have 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6 there. And we're going to go ahead and put these on the graph so we can see what they look like and we can compare them to that parent function. You should notice that the vertex has shifted up 3 spaces. That's because of that 3 at the end. Now that we've seen what happens when we add something to the absolute value, let's see what happens when we multiply something by the absolute value. Pause the video here, try to fill out the t-table, and come back when you're done. All right, it's time to check our t-table. You should have 6, 3, 0, 3, 6. So notice that our y values are a little bit more spaced out than they were in the last one. Let's go ahead and plot them on the graph. As you're plotting these points, notice how they're spaced apart farther. They look like they've been thrown in a taffy puller like in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Notice how the vertex is in the same exact spot. So it hasn't moved up, down, left, or right, but it's become stretched out. That's why we call this a stretch by a factor of 3. Transformations happen in every single type of function. You'll see A, H, and K quite a bit. This A is very similar to question 4. When A is bigger than 1, it's going to stretch our function. When A is a fraction between 0 and 1, it's going to compress or shrink our function. And then if that A value is negative, it could flip our function over or reflect our function over the x-axis. The H value that we saw in question number 2 moved us to the right 3 units. The H value can shift your graph left or right, depending on the sign in front of the number. If you have a negative H value, your graph will shift to the right. If you have a positive H value, your graph will shift to the left. The last shift that we're going to look at is this K value here at the end. It is a vertical shift. So this is like in our example number 3. If we have a positive K value, our graph is going to shift up. If we have a negative K value, our graph is going to shift down. Thanks for coming. See you next time.